I'd love to do kind of a differences in, psychedelics, cannabis. Obviously, you're an expert. You could probably talk extremely well about this. A lot of people moving from cannabis, just from the investing standpoint, move from cannabis and are looking at psychedelics, or that's the easiest path. You're even having companies, of course, move from cannabis to psychedelics. Do you want to chat a little bit? To me, cannabis was always seen, oh, this could be this recreational thing people do, and obviously that's kind of what happened in Canada. From a psychedelic standpoint, I think it's obviously a lot more of a pharma, a lot more of actually going to battle something in particular, rather than people are going to be doing magic mushrooms in their backyard. Would I be correct in thinking that the paths, even though are similar, are maybe heading different ways?
Yeah, the paths are maybe in some instances parallel, but the history is very different of the two things. So if you look at cannabis, cannabis was vilified 80 years ago. When you think back to Reefer Madness, it's a long time ago, which, by the way, you should watch. It's hilarious to watch, but it really reinforces what the public sentiment was at the time and what the policymakers were saying about the evils of cannabis. Psilocybin and other psychedelics didn't have that, generations of stigma around them. But what happened is 30 years ago, 40 years ago in some cases, there was legitimate science done with psychedelics that did show therapeutic benefits. And this, that science did get sidetracked because of the war on drugs, and psychedelics got scooped into other drugs, and nothing really happened for a while. And now it's reemerging because mental health has become such a big issue, and because so many patients are not responding to the pharmaceutical treatment, or have rejected pharmaceuticals because of any of a number of reasons, weight gain or sexual dysfunction or dependency, or other side effects. So they're saying, I don't want to use these pharmaceuticals. And then you have treatment resistant depression, which is people that have tried multiple approaches and it's failed. So taking that early work and the current work that's showing that psychedelics are very effective against these, depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse, anger management, it's taking that through to clinical trials and proving that and getting the appropriate dosage sets us apart from cannabis, which really was very much on a path around recreational use. So that's where they're really very divergent.
Yeah. No, and I think there's a big opportunity, at least in the early days of psychedelics, to kind of be, educating people of the differences, of course. One thing I'd love to ask, as someone who's ran a very successful cannabis company, now, of course, running Havn, do you want to talk about maybe potential red flags? Like, imagine, of course, investors and other people are going to watch these videos. Do you want to talk about some of the red flags that you see in the industry, potentially, that other companies, or just things you would avoid? It doesn't even need to be specific, but if you were coming into this space, not knowing much, what would you tell them, or what would you tell yourself?
Learn a little bit about the licenses and what licenses a company has and what it allows them to do. Because for somebody to say, I've got license X, doesn't really mean anything unless you know what type of license they have. So for example, you could be awarded a dealer's license, which theoretically gives you the ability to sell psilocybin. But you might have a dealer's license that limits you to less than a gram a year. Well, that's not a viable business. So you need to understand what kind of a license they have, what restrictions are on it, which goes back to what's the quality of the facility that they built, what's the quality of their plan, because the amount of product you can sell is typically very much tied to the level of security that you have and the integrity of your various SOPs around security to make sure that you're compliant with those policies. So just having a license isn't enough. What license is it? What is their path to revenue? Understand that. If they're talking purely a clinical model, that's a challenging model to make money. Clinics tend to be a place where you spend money, not make money. So if someone is talking about a clinical model, and I don't want to pick on anyone in particular, but what type of clinics are they looking at operating? How many patients can they attract? Is that actually a revenue generating opportunity, and when will it be cash flow positive? And then I would say the other thing is to take a look at how much, what science are they dealing with? How qualified is their science team? So, we're thrilled. Havn was the first company to get the Section 56 exemption. And we were able to do that because we have the appropriate collection of intellectual capital to navigate a very complicated application process. Typically, the Section 56 is only granted to a research institution or university because that's where you would find the appropriate collection of policy people and scientists and operators that can put together a plan that will actually satisfy the requirements for the application. But we've got the team that's been able to do that. And so I think it's important to look at what's the integrity of the actual science that's behind what's being done, and then how is that going to be eventually converted to revenue.
Yeah. No, interesting. You touched on, of course, licenses. So what can they do in the space? On the other side, hey, businesses need to make money. So what's their path to revenue? Some Look, I think that's a great starting point. Again, those are red flags. For people that are watching, if you have questions, of course, drop them below. We'd love to kind of give some more insight directly related to questions people may have. The one red flag I would say, we already talked about the team. I would also mention the team. Look at what these guys' backgrounds are. Does it look like they're building something real, or does it look like they're just participating in a hot industry? That would be my red flag that I'll throw out there. But Tim, anything else you wanted to say either about the psychedelic industry, things you would tell people that are just looking at it now, the new guys using your background, or anything along those lines?
I think one of the things I'm excited about is, as an industry, we have the ability to offer hope to a lot of people. And mental health is a big issue. Statistically, 11% of the population has some form of a mental health issue, and that's growing. And the conversation and the dialogue around it is growing, and it's now easier to talk about mental health. You've had years and years of things like the Bell Canada Let's Talk campaign. You've had a long time now with high profile celebrities talking about mental health. So it's okay to not be okay. And I think for our industry, that's important because we're going to see more and more mental health issues brought to bear. And certainly as a consequence of the COVID pandemic, I think you're going to see a spike in a number of things around depression, anxiety, and PTSD as people suffer through that. So as an industry, the timing is right with the consumer because mental health has moved to the forefront. The public opinion around psychedelics, as evidenced by the recent vote in Oregon and Washington, D.C., says the timing is right. I think with public policymakers, because you're now seeing the exemptions that have been granted and some of the other moves that are taking place, the timing is right there. And the third thing is, I think that with the investor looking for a new and emerging industry that has promise, that has credibility, that has legs, and can convert to revenue, the timing is right there. So, I feel that Havn is very well positioned in an industry that's emerging at the right time and has put together the right plan and strategy to do that.
Yeah, perfect. And the next video we're going to do, just to intro people, of course, we're going to do a deeper dive into the company, really talk about what's happening. So there's any questions that people have, I'm sure we're going to cover a ton of them in the video already. But of course, if you want to make sure that your question is mentioned, you can drop it below and we'll make sure we at least say something. Tim, thanks so much for joining. I think this was a great video, good kind of industry focus, what needs to happen to get to the next level. And your expertise is always welcomed. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Have a great day.